going on, guys? Welcome on back to Second and Short and our edition of Movers Mondays. Today we're going to be talking about those players, teams, coaches that are moving up or down in our fictional power rankings. I am joined with my co-host Aaron Ben. I am Tyler Lauder. Aaron, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I kind of took offense to you calling our power rankings fictional because they're very real to me. So I just take that into account.
All right, let's start with Thursday Night Football. We had a really entertaining game. We had Arizona, Seattle, and the Seahawks kind of came back and kind of showed who they actually are after being on like a little slump for a few games. Who's moving up for you?
Well, for me, it's the pass rush for the Seattle Seahawks. They got three sacks, which isn't a whole lot, but they were constantly in Kyler Murray's face. Kyler Murray's hard to take down. He's very mobile, very fast, good at getting away from the pressure. But Seattle was able to kind of get him uncomfortable in the pocket. And it feels like they're kind of building off of their game a couple weeks ago against the Bills, where they had 7 sacks. It seems like the pass rush is there. It's just that the secondary for the Seahawks that isn't playing very well.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is like how much everybody has been like overhyping this Cardinals team. And to be fair, like the Cardinals have looked good at times, whatever. Yeah, like they beat Seattle, they beat the Bills. But we have to remember, this is a team that lost to the Lions. They lost to the Panthers earlier in the year. Like their leading rusher is their quarterback. There's a lot of flaws to this team. They're still growing. I think they're still a year away from being contenders. And Seattle showed why it's their division. And as I said, Kyler Murray's leading the team in rushing yards. And that showed here as their rushing game was almost non-existent here. And that's a down for us here is Arizona's run game.
Yeah, I mean, 57 yards for just 3.2 yards per carry is not a recipe for success, especially against Seahawks defense that's given up so many yards, both through the air and also on the ground. So down for me too is the Cardinals rushing game.
Now let's move on to Sunday's action, and we're going to start with something that we predicted. We've been talking about constantly. This is with Cincinnati against Washington, and we said it's a matter of time before this offensive line got Burrow hurt.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's been talking about it all year. Burrow's been great. He's been everything you want, and a rookie quarterback showed a lot of promise. But everyone knew that the offensive line was going to get him hurt, and it looks like torn ACL out for the season.
Yeah, and this is also going to affect, week 13, we were going to see Burrow versus Tua, and it was going to be an awesome matchup for us to see. And yeah, this offensive line gets a huge down for us. This is right now, if the Bengals don't reinvest in offensive line, it'll be one of the worst mistakes an NFL team has made in the history of the NFL, in my opinion. Like, when you have a playmaker, when you have a guy this good, you have to protect him. And his stats would look so much better if he just had an extra 2 seconds in the pocket. There's a reason why Aaron Rodgers is always in the MVP category. It's because he can write a poem, then throw the ball. That's how much time he has.
And moving up for me, at least in this game, it was a Washington rookie running back, Antonio Gibson. I've been kind of following him throughout the year. He's kind of, at one point, had him on my fantasy team, realized it wasn't really a viable player to keep on my team, but he's been getting better, been getting more looks. This past game had 16 carries for 94 yards, had almost 6 yards per carry and a rushing touchdown. I look for him to kind of get going more as the season goes on.
Them losing Darius Geis in the offseason and moving on from him, you thought this Washington team was going to be one of those guys that's like, oh, they're going to need to look for a running back maybe in 2021. Hopefully they can just kind of pull some pieces together and get through. But I think Antonio Gibson is the real deal. And, he's averaging just under 5 yards per carry on the whole season. He continues to rise up for us. Big play for him. His run game was a big reason why the football team got another victory here. Now moving on to Atlanta at the New Orleans Saints. Welcome to the NFL, rookie. Taysom Hill getting his first start type thing, and he didn't do a lot through the air. Like, he didn't play bad through the air. He made a lot of impact on the ground, but that just kind of shows how scary the Saints team can be. And that's why Taysom Hill, at least for me, is getting an up right here, because this Saints team is already dangerous with Drew Brees, who moves a total of 3 yards back and no more than that. That's it. And now Taysom Hill is a guy that can create such another dynamic layer to this offense. Talk about his play yesterday, man.
Well, and he really didn't do bad through the air. Had 233 yards, no picks, ran for 2 touchdowns. I think he's also a really hard player to game plan for just because he's never played a full game at quarterback before this game. So I think Falcons were kind of caught off guard. I like how he started getting some chemistry with Michael Thomas, who had 9 catches for 104 yards. And I think he showed a lot of promise, and he started to show why the Saints paid him so much money.
Yeah, and it makes sense. You know, everybody this whole week was like, why aren't you starting, Jameis Winston? And I think this is why, and I think it's because he gives them that extra layer. Now, with Taysom Hill going up, somebody's got to go down, and Matt Ryan didn't deliver. They had a perfect opportunity. They took an early lead in this game. The Saints couldn't score in the first quarter outside that 1 field goal, and then they just got blanked in the second half. Matt Ryan, Todd Gurley, who's getting it down for you?
I mean, it's both of them for me, but I got to go with Gurley just because he's on my fantasy team. I'll give him the downward edge. 8 carries, 3.3 yards per carry, 26 yards. No touchdowns, no scoring. He had 1 catch. Didn't really do much. I mean, you signed this guy, this big name running back in the offseason to win these games and these big divisional games, and he didn't show up last night.
Yeah, and I think the momentum is gone from, switching head coaches, and, Atlanta was like 3-1 in their past 4 games. I think the momentum's gone. Like when you go up against the Saints team that doesn't have Drew Brees, and, they don't have Emmanuel Sanders there. They don't have like a full array of their offense, and some random tight end, Taysom Hill, comes on in and just owns you. I think Atlanta is hurting themselves by winning too many games this year. They're not going to be able to get a quarterback in the draft. I know some people are going to argue that. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, Todd Gurley, Matt Ryan, they both played poor. I don't know what to do from here. They got to try and find a way to go up. But let's move on to a game that was, oh man, this wasn't even a game. This is just another continuation of the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers playing nobody and looking great while doing it.
Yeah, and I just got to give 2 ups here, and both of them rookies. One is Chase Claypool, who's got 10 touchdowns through 10 games this year, which is crazy good, leads all rookies. And then the other guy is James Robinson, who ran for a respectable 73 yards against this monster Pittsburgh defense. But he's also become the 5th undrafted rookie in NFL history to rush for over 1,000 yards, which is crazy. The other players who did that is Clark Gaines, Dominic Rose, LeGarrette Blount, and Philip Lindsay. So joining some kind of well-known names, but that's pretty impressive from James Robinson, in my opinion.
It was really interesting, the fact that he was like, most time when you look at like box scores and you look at like stat totals and everything, you see like 6 guys running the ball, 5 guys. He was the only guy that is running the ball for this Jags team. He had all 17 carries. Ever since the Steelers traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick, it has been such a huge upgrade for them. For me, their defense is getting it up, because when you play a poor team like the Jags, you're supposed to dominate them on all levels. And that's what they did here. The Steelers team looks good right now. They've got to beat somebody. I know they beat Tennessee a couple weeks ago. That's 1 game. They need to do this against better opponents. But for right now, James Robinson gets an up. Defense gets an up. Claypool gets an up. And Jake Luton. Oh, man. He showed why he's a backup. I mean, it's like there was some deflected passes for those interceptions, but overall, this is Gardner Minshew's team, in my opinion, and it kind of shows how much he means to this team offensively.
Yeah, and I mean, last year we had Minshew mania. I think with him hurt, people were kind of hoping that Jake would come in and provide some Luton sanity. But I think he's just driving everyone Luton insane. Due for 4 interceptions this game. He's got 10 interceptions on the year. He's got 6 interceptions on the year to just 2 touchdowns. Not looking like he's going to do anything really for the Jags this season.
No, I think they're looking for Minshew to get back. This is the team to take notice of, because if Minshew comes back and makes them more competitive, it's hard for me to say go draft a quarterback. But if this continues, I think it's inevitable. Now, let's talk about Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. They took on Cam Newton and the New England Patriots, and Watson looked great here. Huge up for me.
Yeah, I mean, he looked really good. Back to like what we've known to come to expect from him, throwing for over 300 yards, 9.3 yards per attempt, which is crazy. 2 touchdowns, no sacks, no interceptions. He also ran the ball, led the team in rushing with 36 yards. Rushing, added a touchdown on the ground. It looked like the quarterback, like the Deshaun Watson that we've come to know so far in his career.
Yeah, and this game, the Texans were in control the whole time. The Pats made a comeback late in the game, but it just was too little too late type stuff in that second half. I mean, they scored 10 points, but Deshaun Watson went out there and did what any quarterback on a team that lacks true playmakers will do. And I know there's a lot of, if there's Texans fans listening, you guys like Will Fuller, you guys like other pieces on this team, but in my opinion, Deshaun Watson needs help. He's a guy that's trying to do it all, and there are going to be games that does not work. For right now, he gets a huge up because it did work. I kind of want to give some praise to Cam Newton a little bit. He had like a huge 40-yard touchdown to Demary Bird in the third quarter. It was beautiful catch, beautiful throw. One of the most accurate things I've seen him ever do. Huge up here. And if it wasn't for Cam Newton's arm, this game wouldn't have been close. The problem here is the lack of run game. Bill Belichick just showed how the Patriots can beat teams, how they can beat the Ravens with a stout run game, and then let Cam kind of throw it like 20 times. They did the opposite here today. Cam had 40 attempts. They barely ran the ball.
Yeah, I mean, especially against the Houston defense, which is last in the league against the run. You'd expect them to come out and just run the ball down their throat, and they didn't do anything like that. 24 rushes, 86 yards, 3.6 yards per carry for the entire team, and just 1 touchdown on the ground.
So the run game for the Pats gets a slight down for us here. All right, Philadelphia Eagles, Cleveland Browns. Cleveland hasn't won since 94 against Philly, and they get a big W today, major part because Nick Chubb's had a great game. Nick Chubb gets an up. Carson Wentz also had a bad game. He gets a down. Who you want to talk about first?
Yeah, I want to talk about Nick Chubb because he's looked great ever since he came back from injury. He came back last week, ran for over 100 yards. This week, ran for over 100 yards. He didn't have a touchdown this week. Had one half a touchdown last week. There was that one where he ran out of bounds on purpose. But yeah, he's gone for his 6.6 yards per carry last week, 5.7 yards per carry this week. Looked great. Looks like the injury hasn't slowed him down a bit.
No, not at all. And this is how the Browns are going to be able to win. And what's really crazy here is that this is the type of style you want to be playing in the playoffs with a dominant run game, nice defense that can cause turnovers. Here's the thing. There's been a lot of talk about Carson Wentz, and is it time to move on from Carson Wentz? Can you bench him? Is he playing too poor? Guys, he has nobody around him. Even his offensive line is depleted. That pick 6 he threw, he got hit on his blind side. So I don't completely blame him. His play does need to be better, so he gets a down for us here. But overall, I don't think it's all his fault. I think the Eagles are just kind of a mess right now.
A good quarterback is supposed to elevate the team around him, and in my opinion, he hasn't done that. Need to see more of that from him. But again, has very little talent surrounding him, both on the line and at receiver. So
now let's go into a game that was one-sided from the start to the end, and that was Carolina taking on the Detroit Lions. And Carolina with, XFL MVP, well, he didn't get it, but it is the MVP, PJ Walker, came out there and played really well. He had some turnovers in the red zone and everything, but that's what's crazy about this. Carolina won 20-0, and they threw 2 interceptions in the red zone, just showing how close this game was not.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, what really impressed me was the Panthers' defense. Had the shutout, had 5 sacks, held them to just 40 yards rushing on 2.4 yards per carry. Passing, Matt Stafford had 178 yards passing. The Panthers dominated them both on defense and offense, but defense especially, what I was really impressed by them.
Yeah, and they were playing without middle linebacker Tahir Whitehead, who they signed over from Oakland last year, and he's one of those guys that gets mass amount of tackles and everything, but his coverage is horrendous, and he didn't play a single snap. He was limited all week in practice, and they played their best defensive outing of the year. Panthers defense gets a big up for us. PJ Walker gets a big up for us. I'm not saying that he looks like the future quarterback for Carolina, but they don't look bad with him. And getting it down, we're not going to talk about it for too long, but let's Matt Patricia. How is he still a NFL head coach?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say. He's been terrible for years. Needs to be fired. Let's move on.
Tennessee taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Not what you like to call them. We're not going to do that. But, this whole game, man, for those that don't know, Aaron was like nervously texting me and just like, oh, it's over. Whatever. This sucks. Whatever, man. We're not playing well. Ravens are playing really well. And then all of a sudden it just flipped. And all of a sudden out of nowhere, here comes Derrick Henry doing Derrick Henry things. They go to overtime and Derrick Henry does the most Derrick Henry thing Derrick Henry's ever done. And that's just beast somebody and just kind of stroll into the end zone for a walk-off touchdown.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone talks about how Derrick Henry's a second half player, second half of the game, second half of the season. The first half of this game, or the first 3 quarters, I think he had about 44 yards rushing. And then he just, in the fourth quarter in overtime, just turned it on and had a 29-yard walk-off touchdown, showing why he's the king.
Tennessee Titans look legit right here. This game, they hung in with Baltimore. I liked how they played in the fourth quarter and overtime. That's when I think a team's like true mentality comes out, like when you can evaluate them the best, is how well they play when they're tired, they're exhausted, they're losing. And they came back and they played really well. Baltimore Ravens now, losers of 3 of their last 4. This team just didn't close it out when they had the opportunity. And they lose another close game here, and they're on the verge of missing the playoffs at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that, and the down here for me is their offensive coordinator, Bill Roman. We've seen this time and time again where we saw it with the Niners, we saw it when he was with the Bills, now we're seeing it here where he has a monster season. Last year with the Ravens, they, of course, he had the MVP, team leading the league in rushing, all of that jazz. And then this year it seems like teams have figured him out and he's not adjusting. And you saw it in this game where J.K. Dobbins was running. He was running for about 6 yards per carry in the first half. Second half, they come out leading the game by 11 points, and they didn't give him the ball. I mean, they just kind of abandoned that and ended up losing them the game.
Now, talking about New York Jets, Los Angeles Chargers, and the Jets scored right away, and I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Are the Chargers defense this bad that they're just going to let the Jets score on them? And then there was a really terrible pick 6 by Flacco, where they're in their own defensive red zone, and the game just turned away from there. I mean, Herbert looked awesome. Keenan Allen looked even better. I'm really proud of that, stud start that we had on Fantasy Fridays.
We got to toot our own horn right there for that.
But let's not dwell on this too much because this is kind of repetition for us. Herbert played well. Allen played well. Jets played bad.
Yeah, I mean, this game, I know it ended with just a 6-point lead for the Chargers, but it was never as close as a score would indicate. Keenan Allen was our main up here, 16 catches, 145 yards, and a touchdown. Looked great. Chargers looked great.
Miami Dolphins, Denver Broncos, and this I feel like a lot of people lost money in this game right here. This seemed like an obvious, the Dolphins are playing so well, Denver's playing so bad, Drew Lock can't help but turn the ball over, Tua's being conservative, and something that has been holding true for the past 8 years is Denver's pass rush looks good and can win them games, and that was the key here today for them.
They sacked Tua 6 times. They're constantly in his face. They looked like they really had just shaken him up. As a rookie, he wasn't really used to seeing this kind of pass rush, and he didn't throw any interceptions. He didn't fumble the ball. He didn't have any turnovers, but you could see he was off his game, and that leads us into the down, where the down for me was Tua. I mean, I don't know if it's Tua per se, but the fact that he got benched, I was not a fan of that. Yeah, Flores said that Tua wasn't injured. That's not why they switched. I think at this point, taking him out of the game is just kind of shaking his confidence. You started him over Ryan Fitzpatrick for a reason. Keep him in there through good and through bad. Let him learn.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this is a huge learning moment. You don't see other quarterbacks like Andrew Luck's first year. He wasn't just like, okay, man, we're not playing too well. Like you're getting hit a lot. Let's just pull you out. Like, no, you gotta learn. You gotta trial and error. I mean, Peyton Manning led the league in interceptions his rookie year. He didn't just get benched because he had a bad game. That's how you learn. That's how you adapt. And I think them trying to do like a quick fix is an issue. This is kind of what I don't like. This is why I didn't want them to put Tua in the first place. This is why I didn't want them to re-sign Ryan Fitzpatrick or bring him in if they're going to draft Tua. You've got to give the keys to the city to your guy and don't take him back when he's having a bad day.
All right, next game.
Dallas, Minnesota.
Up for me here has got to be Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins had kind of a rocky start to the season, but lately he's been kind of on fire. I mean, especially this game, he came out threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had over 10 yards per attempt, which is insane. But add that to the fact that last week against the Bears defense, 8 yards per attempt. Against the Lions, 11 yards per attempt. Against the Packers, 11.4 yards per. I mean, he's been on fire for the last month, and no one's been talking about it. In the last 4 games, he's thrown for 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he's looked pretty good. And if the team's been winning, and then this loss last night, it's not on him. That's on the defense.
But all you ever hear Vikings fans say is like, we can't win with this quarterback. He's not a playoff quarterback. He's not going to win us a Super Bowl. And that's the most asinine thing I've ever heard. Like, your defense is so poor. You guys literally lost almost an entire defense over the past 2 years. You're not going to be able to win with that. That's simple as that. There's so many good teams that can't hold because of their defense. And it goes both ways. There's so many great defenses that can't hold because their offense can't score points. It's got to work all around. It's not Cousins' fault. Cousins playing great. He gets a huge up for us here. There's no down in this game. I think Andy Dalton played well. I think the offensive line was better for the Cowboys. I think Dalvin Cook getting hurt kind of scared me. That hit he took, I was totally nervous about it. It looked like, I don't know what happened, but a couple running backs this week got lots of hits, like hit hard, and I didn't like it. No downs for us this week in this game. Big up for Cousins. Let's move into the final game of the Sunday afternoon action, and that was the Green Bay Packers taking on the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts look like contenders, man. This whole team for the Colts, in my opinion, gets an up on the way that they held in there with this offense.
They were down at one point 21-7. They were down 28-14. Came back. Phillip Rivers played out of his mind, and they managed to come back, tie it up. They managed to come back, take the lead. Packers tied it up, and then Colts managed to win it in overtime. And I mean, defenses didn't look great last night, but they held when it counted. And the offense, of course, we saw what they did last night, put up points, and it looks like they're finding ways to win games. And the game next week against the Tennessee Titans could very well be the game that decides that division. So they're looking like a very strong team this year.
Yeah, and I mean, we're sitting here, this game came down to the turnover battle, and the Colts had 2 turnovers, and the Packers had 4. They lost 3 fumbles in this game. 3 fumbles. Like, there are teams that fumble a lot in games, but they don't lose almost every fumble. These guys lost every fumble that they had. And MVS in the overtime fumbling that ball. I know LaFleur doesn't completely hold everything against him and everything, but you can't do that in overtime. Then again, if you want to beat this team, you can't let them go to overtime anyway. So I don't completely blame him. They should have finished it in regulation. They shouldn't have let him come back and tie it up. Green Bay's fumbling problem is a down for us here.
And our final game, Sunday Night Football, was a great game. Kansas City against the Raiders. Who do you have for ups, Tyler?
No downs this week for these teams. I just say the offenses. These guys looked great. This is the second time that we've seen them play that offensive players have just been balling out. Tyreek Hill looked great. Darren Waller looked great. The quarterbacks played really well. I like Josh Jacobs' game in here, and I like Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's game in here. There's not a thing I didn't really like about this game. It was entertaining, and it's like one of those like hidden gems that you wouldn't expect to hit when the schedule comes out. And then here we are in week 11, and you're like, this was the game of the week, at least in my opinion.
Pretty clean football played by both teams. No fumbles. They just had one interception by each quarterback, and it all came down to the last drive of the game. The Raiders scored. They thought, well, no way Patrick Mahomes has enough time to score with 1:43 left in the game. Pat Mahomes took that challenge, threw a touchdown pass to Travis Kelce with 28 seconds left of the game, and that sealed it. So great game down to the wire. Great way to end football Sunday.
Yeah, and here's another cool thing about this is that 8 different players had a touchdown in this game, not counting the quarterbacks because obviously they're touching the ball a lot, but 8 different guys scored in this game, just showing you that you had no idea where the next play was going to, where the next touchdown was going to. Really, that's all it came down to, was whoever had the ball at the end was going to win the game. And unfortunately for the Raiders, it was the Chiefs. And right now, before we jump into our final segment, do you think this Chiefs team is going to lose another game this season?
I mean, it's close. I think their biggest challenges will be next week against the Bucs, and then they have a big game against the Saints that could have some serious implications for both teams. I think they could potentially run the table and take that first seed away from the Steelers. I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, you said Tampa Bay. They play tonight, as of time of recording this, against the Los Angeles Rams. They'll be hosting them. Give us a prediction on this game. Tom Brady's been playing really well. The Rams have been playing great on defense. Somebody's got to give here.
Yeah, and this is a real intriguing matchup. Bucs have been good on offense and defense. Rams have been great on offense and defense. For me, slight edge to the Rams. I just think the Bucs looked really vulnerable in their game against the Saints. I think the Rams are running the ball really well, and I think they'll be able to run the ball, continue to run against the Bucs, and I think they're going to take it maybe by a point or two, but I think it's going to be the Rams in the end.
What is your point prediction on this game?
I've got 24-23.
Real close game. I think this game is going to get close to the 30s. I think the offenses are going to stand out here. And it's going to come to whoever's defense closes down in the fourth quarter. With that being said, I think I have a 31-27 victory for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It should be a fun game nonetheless. And that is going to do it for us here on Second and Short and this week's edition of Monday Movers, reviewing everything that happened in Week 11 of the NFL. My name is Tyler Louder. He is Aaron Ben. Be sure to click that subscribe button down below to stay up to date on everything that is Second and Short. Stay tuned for our Fantasy Friday episode, Studs, Duds, and Sleepers, coming this Friday. And if you guys want to check us out on any social media platform, be sure to look at us at
Facebook, where we're updating every post, every episode that comes out. Twitter, where we try to keep it fresh with different polls and interacting with everyone. And on Instagram, where we have midweek posts, news updates, discussion points, highlights, stuff like that. And then on Saturdays, day before the game, Sundays before the game, to have a little pick'em game going on in the Instagram story. Come in and vote on who you think is going to win each game, and see what we think. See who we think is going to win each game.
That's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your guys' week.